Hello. This is the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Your story can be encouraging, inspiring, and very transforming. We want guests to share their experiences and events in their lives that can benefit someone else. All of us have a story, and so if you have one that you would like to share today, please contact us and share your story. And contact us on our website, www.dealbyme, and get one of our books, or t shirt, or cap that says encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. We love to share our story with all of our listeners who have been with us for some time now. And today we have with us Sandy Stream, who is an author and activist whose work is built on the belief that everyone deserves and is capable of finding peace and warrior like strength within themselves. What an awesome guest we have, and I'm so grateful for her coming and sharing with us today. Sandy, will you share with us a little bit about yourself and where you've been interviewed from? And then we'll get in a good conversation that will talk about you and what you do. And we'll give you an opportunity to share your books. But let's start off by just introducing yourself as briefly as you can to listeners of this podcast.
Thanks, James. Well, my name is Sandy Street. I live in Montreal, and I basically consider myself just a human being. And so, for sure, I can offer titles, and I could tell you, yes, I did go to law school, and I did do this and that in my life, and I'm working in certain aspects right now, but primarily, I just consider myself a human being. And I'm currently busying myself doing courage circles in Montreal that I organize several a week, um, which really feels like the right thing to do for me.
Okay, Sandy, I've read your profile and very interesting, very intriguing. And I note that you taught law for 20 years, raising uh, two children and facing a life full of adversities and lessons. And you decided to turn efforts toward facilitating workshops for young and experienced adults, and so that you could encourage them to live in peace and power. That was interesting. Could you tell us a little bit about how you came about doing that?
So I did write a book over the past few years because I myself was going through so many difficulties trying to piece together how I could live in peace myself and live in my own power myself before worrying about anybody else. And so, it took many pieces of the puzzle for me to come to that space. But how I do that now is for others is to have these courage circles, I call them, and we sit together. And as I said at the beginning of this interview, we let go of our titles or what we've achieved or not achieved, our our dogs, our cats, our kids. We kind of let go of everything,
Mm-hmm.
and we try to deal with each other from what I encourage people to do is to deal from their essence. So really to look at themselves as something deeper than just what you've achieved, what degrees or anything else, and just as some people like to use the word soul or energy or essence. It doesn't really matter, but just something that's more interior, and to talk to each other from that space. And then, to learn to listen in a very different way than we're used to listening to each other in our society. Most of the time, people, I don't think, are actually listening to each other. Very often, they're criticizing or putting people down or doubting or creating distrust in others and all kinds of other behaviors. And in this space, we create a space where people are actually respectfully listening to each other. And from that, each person can start to figure out, how they want to guide their life. So
Mm-hmm.
we talk about all kinds of topics. We talk about inner peace versus outer peace. We talk about demonizing emotions. We talk about what is pride, outer pride, inner pride. You know, a lot of
Hmm.
times we're trying to get things from the outside, right? And I try to encourage people to, look inside to get those, those
Hmm.
solutions. So
Hmm.
that's the intro.
Let's talk about that a little bit
Yeah,
because I want you to talk about this demonizing emotions. Why is it
yeah.
important to stop demonizing emotions? Why is that so important, yeah, for an
Yeah, so
individual?
I think for about 5,000 years, we've been what I call decorporated. We've been kind of cut off from our bodies and we're all in our heads in the thinking mode, right? And we're not,
Hmm.
feeling ourselves and feeling our bodies. And emotions are just one of the things that was not encouraged to accept and access and actually listen to. So I wouldn't even say we shouldn't demonize them. We should actually put them on a pedestal and see
Hmm.
what our emotions are telling us. So, if I feel sad, instead of saying, oh, I shouldn't feel sad, I have everything, or I shouldn't feel this, I shouldn't feel that, we would try to do the opposite and say, oh, I really feel sad. And that must be for a reason. We have an inner compass, and to look and listen to why we're sad. Maybe we feel lonely and maybe we need to try to find a friend or maybe something to actually listen to our emotions instead of demonizing them. Or if we feel angry, maybe somebody has breached a boundary and we need to say something or stand up to ourselves. Doesn't mean we're going to lash out or hurt anyone, but just to feel our emotions and understand ourselves deeply is really, for me, it's one of the first steps to living in inner peace and inner power. And then once we start feeling ourselves all the time and processing maybe some old emotions or current ones, and we're doing this on a regular basis, then we start to, just live in more peace because we're acting in alignment with our own inner self and what we should do. And we start to feel other things. So we're no longer just feeling our emotions. We might feel our environment. We might feel the trees and the air and our, many things. We feel life. We feel our connection. And so basically, we're trying to get into the feeling mode as opposed to the thinking mode, which has been over glorified, in my opinion, to the detriment of the body, where there's a lot of wisdom and there's a lot of opportunity to live really much more fully, when we are in ourselves in a deeper way.
Interesting. You express uh, a feeling of confidence, and I like just hearing how you talk because even though you've taught law, and I have a legal background myself. I practice law, so I can identify a lot with what you're saying. You come to realize that it's not about the titles. As a matter of fact, someone was interviewing me earlier today at 12 o'clock, and they asked, "So, what do you want me to call you?" And I have a MD, Masters of Divinity. I have uh, also a D-Min, Doctor of Ministry, and I have a JD. And so she said, "Can I call you Reverend Doctor?" And I say, "Well, whatever you want to call me, but I'm not into titles. So if you want to call me uh, Dr. Smith, you want to call me Reverend Smith, if you just want to call me Smitty, I'm fine. So I
Yeah.
feel you. I know exactly where you where you are, and I do appreciate you sharing that. Uh, you talked a little bit about in your profile a little bit about uh, self love and a lot of other things that I just want you to kind of emphasize a little bit about. So tell me, why do you say self love is not selfish? Could you kind of share that a little bit for us?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first, I love, your talk about confidence. For me, confidence is not, using our head. Confidence in our head would be comparing ourselves with somebody else and I'm superior to you. That's not confidence in my view. Confidence is just being in yourself and feeling comfortable with who you are and what you're doing all the
Mm-hmm.
time, right? So that's confidence, and not having to look outside for answers all the time when you're looking inside. So the word confidence has the word trust in it. So there's a trust, confide in yourself, right? So you feel confident when you trust yourself. And unfortunately, we're just, I think a lot of us are not raised to just even turn inside, whether it's about love, self love, or self trust, or self approval, or all the other self things that we can do. We kind of we look outside to get this. So we're looking for someone else to love us, or looking for someone else to approve of us, or looking
Mm-hmm.
for somebody else to trust us. And when we learn to give that to ourselves, some people might think you're selfish, or some people
Mm-hmm.
might think you don't care about what other people think. But actually, it's not selfish at all to take care of yourself or to listen to yourself. In my opinion, is absolutely your obligation and responsibility to listen to yourself and to take care of yourself. That is how you would become a person that feels well in our world. And if you feel okay, you're not going to be doing all kinds of damaging actions or behaviors to other people because you feel well. So taking care of yourself, to me, and loving yourself and accepting yourself is the the essence of living in peace in the world, and not doing outer, damage, because you don't have inner conflict, right? Whatever happens inside happens outside. So if we feel peaceful inside, we're going to be peaceful outside, right?
Mm.
So that is why, for me, the priority is to really love yourself, approve of yourself, take care of
Mm.
yourself. And you actually end up becoming very unselfish, because now your cup might get full and now we
Mm.
can spill it over, right? So
Mm.
helping people or doing things for people when we ourselves are empty tank, that for me is kind of irresponsible.
I love what you're saying. This is awesome because we're so into self denial. That's what we're kind of taught. And your position is that when you love self, uh, it's also, it makes you even uh, not as selfish. Am I saying that right?
Well, yes, because for me to really deeply, deeply love myself, forgive myself, understand myself, all those things, right? You really have deep understanding of a human being, yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes a very deep understanding to get to that point. And so if I can really, really understand myself so deeply, it allows me to really understand you as well. So we become just much more compassionate human beings after we've done that to ourselves, right? And so many times we're taught that, if you don't do nice things for people, you're not a good person or something. So you
Mm.
have to, people are constantly grabbing at trying to help others in order to get this feeling of like, I'm a good person, or I'm good, or something like that. And I would say, this is just completely untrue, and it should be completely reversed, the opposite. First, let us treat each other under the assumption that there is
Mm-hmm.
complete goodness inside. And so I don't need to do anything for anybody else. I already know and feel my inner goodness. And now let's see what I need to do in my life to take care of this or that, or what behaviors I need to look at. But I don't need to do something externally in order to arrive at that feeling, because it's already true.
Okay.
Contrary to all the messages that we get 24/7 from everybody who is saying that something's wrong with you, or
Mm-hmm.
you are this, or you are that. It's just not something I believe personally.
So that's how we get this inside versus the outside. I assume, so how do we get love, from the inside versus the outside? How does that come about?
Even the word getting, as if it's not there. It's a bit of a funny question, right?
Yeah.
Um, because, my thought is that, when you start doing, either heart centered meditation, or you start feeling yourself deeper in your heart and all that, it's almost like a natural state that you would do. It's almost that you have to not believe the thoughts that were put into your head by other people. You know, if let's say you've been called an idiot your whole life, right? So you might have internalized those thoughts, and now you have this thought saying, "Oh, I'm such an idiot," or "I'm so stupid," or "I should do this," "I'm not good enough," all these things. But these are just kind of thoughts that have been put in our head by other people, or, you know, not healthy parenting or something. So the more you get into your heart space and you feel yourself, you just kind of doubt that that's not really true. And if you look for the truth, you just feel, you start to feel yourself like, no, I'm not. I'm just, you know, I'm hurt because of this, or I'm just sad, or I'm just struggling. I'm not what people have said to me in the past, or what words have come into my head. It's so you start doubting, or challenging those thoughts, and just feeling yourself more, and having kindness to yourself as opposed to harshness towards yourself, which is what you might have experienced your whole life. People being hard on each other, you know, which is
Hmm.
something that in my circle does not happen. People are kind and encouraging, and just accepting whatever person is experiencing, you know, without criticizing that, you know, having more compassion for the difficulties as opposed to criticizing people when they're under difficulty, which really doesn't make sense, right?
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
Sandy, you know, I pastored for uh,
Mm,
32 years. I just retired
mm,
about 3 or 4 months ago, the last of last year.
mm-hmm,
And I started this podcast because I wanted to uh, share, you know, about encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. You know, like we talked about before we start the recording,
mm,
uh, because I know there are a lot of people who do have certain challenges, don't have the confidence. You know, they feel as if they can't do certain things. They're kind of down on their luck. And you're a perfect person to uh, answer this question for me. How would you share with somebody, you know, who needs that encouragement and inspiration, who need a transformational moment in their lives? What would you say to them? Because you seem to have such great story that I believe listeners of this podcast can relate to.
I mean, it's not so much the words, I think, that people say, but the energy that they're saying it with, right? So if I say, for example, yeah, you can do it, you can get a job, right? You just have to work harder and you'll get it, right? So that
Hmm.
energy might actually sound like, to the person, they might take it like, if I don't get a job, I'm a loser. So that's
Hmm.
not necessarily helpful for me. The energy that anything that you say to somebody would be like, if you want to encourage, you can do this, or I trust whatever. But no matter what you do, or if you can't right now, it's okay,
Hmm.
right? So they don't have to achieve anything, or they don't have to arrive anywhere at all. So that energy really, accepting that even their current moment of suffering is okay. It doesn't make them a lesser of a person. It doesn't make something wrong with them. That energy that I have to fix you or something's wrong with you is really that negative energy that keeps coming at us 24/7. And it's a very different energy than, I hear you, or I hear that's hard for you, and what can we do now? Or what do you think would help you? Or how can I support you? Is very different than, oh, I know how to fix you. I know how you
Hmm.
can do this fixing, or what's wrong with you energy. I'm going to fix you because something is wrong with you, is really what creates a lot of the inner
Hmm.
insecurity, as opposed to talking to a human being, understanding, just understanding where they're at, or understanding what they've gone through, and sitting with them, uh, and trusting that they can find the answers, that you can maybe help or
Hmm.
support, but the answers are actually in the person.
Hmm.
They're in the person, because they know their life better than anybody else. They know what they've gone through. So just sitting with them, with acceptance and trust, and um, just really giving them the clarity that there's nothing to fix,
Hmm.
actually. There's just nothing to fix. They're just, maybe ways to live healthier, but nothing internally and deeply to
Hmm.
fix. I would say
Well,
that's what
well
helps me.
said. Well said. I hear you very well. Uh,
Mm.
why do you think courage is so critical? You know.
I mean, one of the very important things that, for me, and believe me, I've been in, I think like you described, you've been in very difficult times for yourself, and so
Hmm.
have I. And one of the very difficult things to do in our life is to start to set boundaries, to basically say no to people like, no, I'm not an idiot, or no, I don't want to do that. It's not right for me, or no. And that takes, sometimes we have to feel a certain level of healthy anger to do that. It takes a lot of courage to do that, to say, no, I don't agree with you. That's not right for me. That's not what I'm going to do. Some people might not like that. They might shun you, or they might say disapprove, or they might say you're wrong, or they might even cut your relationship sometimes, right? So it takes courage to decide, like, I'm going to take care of myself and do what I think I need to do for me. Uh, and regardless of, everybody else in the world criticizing or not, agreeing or not, approving or not, shunning or not, that takes a lot of courage actually
Hmm.
to do that. And we don't have a lot of people who encourage us to do that, to say, no, do what you think, do what you think is best for you. It's hard. We don't have a lot of support of that kind around
Hmm.
for now. So,
Hmm.
yes, it takes a ton of courage to be able to stand up for yourself, and sometimes to have to stand alone, at least temporarily. That takes a lot of courage.
Well,
Yeah.
that's very encouraging to hear you say that, and I know listeners of this podcast can appreciate your sayings. One of the things I want to just say, and listeners, first of all, don't go into place because I want to tell you we'll be right back with some more information from Sandy's as she continued to talk a little bit to us about her story. But first of all, let me ask you, Sandy, how can listeners of this podcast get information on you, whether it's a book or anything else that you might have to display for them that could be helpful? Would you share that for us, please?
Sure. Well, I mean, I actually haven't done social media because I've been quite a private person, and it took me a lot of courage actually to start doing podcasts. But I guess I just feel tired of witnessing how I witness things, and feel like I should speak and start speaking about these topics, and sharing these topics. And so, what I do have is my website. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
It's called thecouragecircle.com. And that's where you can get information about what I'm up to, or about the book, or about the circles that I do. They're in Montreal in person. So you'd have to come to Montreal if you want to join a circle. But that's the only place, basically. Thecouragecircle.com is where I post my information and my contact and everything else.
So that's the circle of what
The
again?
Courage Circle. Thecouragecircle.
Oh, the courage circle. Okay,
Yeah.
the
And that's
courage.
the name of my book, because I actually painted a circle on my wall in the
Okay,
living room. And I
okay,
sat there under my circle and I said, okay, I'm going to have to get some courage here and figure out how to live my life. And so
okay.
that's where the idea came from.
So it's the courage circle.
Yeah.
All right, that's
Mhm.
great. Uh, I know listeners will appreciate that, and I'm just grateful for you sharing it. Uh, how do we stop and start our own suffering? How do we stop and start our own suffering? You've been through so much, so I got to ask you these questions.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways. I mean, like I said, it's many pieces of the puzzle. Like, the book I wrote just has a lot of pieces of puzzles, right? It's not like one thing, two things, but definitely after some time, we can start to look, like I said, we're looking inward. We can also look to how we are contributing to our own suffering, instead of saying, they did that and they're causing me all this pain. And, we can start to see, what are we doing?
Mm.
It's not blaming ourselves. Blaming is a harsh word. It's not punishing ourselves either, right? But how are we actually, able to stop our own suffering? And sometimes that might be by learning to forgive ourselves or forgive another person, or it might be to respect our anger and our boundaries, right?
Mm.
That can stop our own suffering, because maybe we keep interacting with someone who's dismissive with us, and we keep suffering and suffering because they keep treating us
Mm.
in a way that's not healthy. But we are able to stop that suffering by placing boundaries, or doing that. So it might be that way. It might be there's so many ways where we internally have the power to see how we participate in things. And if we see how we are participating, then we can see how we can stop participating in certain things that are causing suffering. We can also ask for help. So a lot of people think asking for help is a sign of weakness. In my view, asking for help is a sign of power and courage, because you're giving the message to yourself that if I need help, that means I'm kind of worth something to be
Mm.
helped, right?
Mm.
I have a value that if I get helped, that means there's value to me. I matter here, and I should get myself, and it shows responsibility for yourself and going in the right direction. So we can also try to ask for help in order to
Mm.
move past our suffering. We can ask for support, or to look for friends that can be supportive instead of putting us down or criticizing us, people that are in the world that are better listeners or encouraging. I don't know you well, but maybe like yourself, right?
Mm.
To surround yourself by that, instead of keep going nonstop over and over into relationships which are putting you down or weakening you. So there's many ways actually that we are responsible, and we can learn to not suffer by making different choices of who we're with, how we're feeling, many, many things
Mm.
that we can do. Yeah.
You have interesting views, and I kind of get this from reading your profile and a little bit of your bio about people needing to be in groups or
Mm.
belonging. And you also talk about, comfort zones, as opposed to the uncomfortable zone. So can you kind of share that? First of all, talk about, you know, uh, people who need to be in groups uh, to feel belonging, and also, why is the comfort zone the uncomfortable zone?
Yeah.
I just like I want you to elaborate on that a little bit for me.
um, okay. Well, which one do you want first? The
Either
belonging,
either
or
one,
okay?
either one.
The belonging one for me is a huge one. Again, so we are often looking to the outside to feel like, okay, I belong to this group. I belong to this, city. I belong to this family. I belong to this country. I belong to this religious group. So we're seeking some sense of belonging where, just like I was saying earlier, we're seeking outside someone to tell us that we are good, or someone to tell
Mm-hmm.
us to approve, or someone to tell us whatever. Same way, we are looking to other people to tell us, oh, yeah, you belong, right? And for me, this is very disempowering. And actually, it's not even about power. I would say it's just not the truth. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, my experience of what is true is that we already actually belong. So to look for it is actually contrary to the truth. The truth is every human being actually already belongs because they're here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question of belong is as if you're saying, like, does the zebra belong here? What do you mean, does the zebra belong? The zebra is on Earth, so therefore it's here. So it belongs here already. So just even asking the question leads us to insecurity. And as we spend more time with ourselves, in ourselves, feeling the earth, doing, grounding and meditation, and feeling our belonging in nature in general, how we are part of it, We don't necessarily need to seek to, I'll say, belong in quotes in some group, because to me, even, those groups are often limited and conditional, right? You only belong in them if you follow certain rules. If you start breaking some rules, you're out. So
Mm.
it's doesn't feel so secure, anyways. To me, those groups. What really feels true for me is that we already belong, and that's it. So wherever I go, whoever I deal with, I already feel myself that I belong because I'm here. So
Okay.
there's nothing to question there. Yeah.
Mm.
That's my experience, but that took a lot of time of being in yourself and not in your head, being in your body and being in nature and being on the ground and, feeling yourself fully, feeling your inner nature. So many things.
Well, I guess when you have that feeling of not needing to be in groups, that is your comfort zone. Am I correct?
Yeah, like I feel I kind of belong everywhere with everyone, actually.
Hmm.
So I don't
Okay.
have this distinguishing feature anymore. Like I'm amongst I'm in nature just like you are in nature. We are,
Okay.
the tree is here, the tree is here, I'm here, you're there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in terms of like the comfortable zone aspect, so that's so that I can speak to, it's like so if we're in our head only, again, instead of being in the body, right? So the head is like I like to see it like a calculator. So imagine you
Hmm.
have a calculator and it's just a really good calculator. So a calculator head with numbers and is always calculating, if I do this, then that happens. I calculate who's better, who's worse. I might calculate and compare this with that. Okay, this happened in the past, so this might happen in the future. So this kind of calculating is always using the past in terms of predicting the future, right? Because it's using the past and therefore the future.
Hmm.
So anything that doesn't like match with the past will be very uncomfortable because it doesn't know what's going to happen, right? Like I've never gone to another country. So it's very uncomfortable. I can't predict it. It's
Hmm.
super uncomfortable.
Hmm.
But it's not necessarily comfortable to be in this country. We just don't know what's
Hmm.
going to happen. So it's not that it's actually comfortable. It's just we don't know. It's not part of our information from the past, but it can be super uncomfortable. I could be in a really bad relationship, but I've never had something different. So I'm actually comfortable in
Okay.
something only because it's already known.
Okay.
But if we operate instead from the body and in our heart and in our feeling instead of this calculating mode, we don't worry as much about what's going to happen. We just follow our feeling more. So just like we listen to our feelings, we'll say, I feel like going on this podcast with James. It feels right to me. I don't really know what's going to happen. And that's fine. It still feels right without all the predicting because we're trusting ourselves more to follow, what feels right, what feels, oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't know why exactly, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but
Hmm.
I'm going to trust these feelings because I'm more and more in touch with myself and I'm trusting myself more. So I
Okay.
don't know what's going to happen on this podcast, James, and that's fine.
I hear you. I,
Yeah.
I hear you very well. Let me ask
Yeah,
you my last question.
sure.
Why did you decide to write the book? I think you said The
Mm.
Courage Circle. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What made you decide to write it?
Well, I wasn't really trying to write a book. I was taking notes on the floor in my own difficulties. I call them the sanity notes. I was just trying to organize information that I was listening to and feeling and what I was thinking and just everything else and trying to organize it myself into my own sanity notes. And then, these sanity notes started to make sense all together. And so, they evolved into becoming this book that's organized into chapters. So from a lot of chaos, somehow there seems to be some order for me. So I definitely did not go out trying to write a book. I went out trying to get my own sanity and peace.
Okay.
And this is just, I guess, an expression of that.
Oh, right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Sandy. This has been an awesome conversation with you today, and I've just really enjoyed it. I love your confidence and how you have shared your story, And so I just want to say thank you.
Well,
And
I just want to say
yeah,
thank you back, James,
yeah,
for having me and allowing this conversation to occur. And I hope it's helpful to some of your listeners. I don't know who your listeners better than I do, but I imagine the work you're doing is to help them and encourage them. And so I hope that what we've done today will do that for them.
thank you so much. And there you have it. Sandy Stream, who is the author of The Courage Circle. It's a book about power, it's a book about finding peace inside, it's a book about feeling confidence, it's a book about coming out of the most difficult emotional situations strong and soft at the same time. What an awesome interview. And again, let me say thank you. Uh, thank you, Sandy,
Thank you,
for
James.
this interview.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.